I started my first night shift at what the old-timers called the frozen hellhole. It was a massive -25 degrees Celsius cold store belonging to Wester Foods' industrial meat processing plant in Rotherham, South Yorkshire. The drive-in was nothing but dim yellow sodium lights cutting through an empty industrial estate, rows of huge steel warehouses stretching under the gray English sky. The air already smelled of heavy industry mixed with damp and that bone-deep cold that got into you before you even stepped inside the building. This wasn't anyone's dream job. It was a last resort, something to keep the debt collectors from kicking down my door. The cold hit like 1,000 needles the second I walked through the heavy insulated doors, cutting straight through my thick thermal jacket, balaclava, and industrial gloves. The stench of raw meat was everywhere. Thick, metallic blood and frozen fat mixed with the sharp bite of ammonia from the refrigeration system. It wasn't just a smell, it was a presence that clung to every breath. Metal clanged constantly. Hooks carrying huge sides of pork rattled against each other whenever the air currents shifted or a pallet got moved. The low roar of the massive ventilation fans and the heavy thrum of compressors created this eerie cold symphony that echoed through the vast, empty space. I tried to steady my breathing to the rhythm of the fans, a weird habit I'd picked up from previous night shifts. Every footstep on the frost-covered concrete floor sounded too loud, swallowing me in total isolation. The steel racks towered 8 to 12 meters high, forming long, dark canyons packed with hanging carcasses and vacuum-sealed pallets stacked to the ceiling. The sheer size of the place made me feel tiny and breakable. This wasn't a place for humans. It was a giant freezing machine slowly grinding down time and anything alive inside it. At exactly 10 p.m., Marge Kane, the night shift supervisor, handed over the duties. Marge was in her 50s, her face lined with deep wrinkles like old cuts frozen in place, skin pale under the thick protective gear. Her eyes looked cloudy, like she'd stared into too many shadows on too many long nights. In one hand, she held a waterproof notebook, stained with brownish-red streaks that I didn't want to think about, and a heavy bunch of double-sided keys that jangled with every movement. She wasn't friendly. She ran through the procedures fast and blunt, her voice raspy and carrying little clouds of frozen breath. Check the temp logs, move pallets when needed, do the rounds. Everything's mostly automated. Not much to do. Just remember, never break the rules. Then she walked me over to the main cold store entrance. There, taped to the door with industrial duct tape, was a yellowed A4 sheet sealed in plastic, the night shift rules. It was covered in staple holes and handwritten additions in different inks and handwriting styles. Proof of years of incidents. Marge pulled out a red permanent marker and a fresh stapler from her pocket. With a completely blank face, almost like a ritual, she added a new line at the bottom and stapled it in. "Rule 21, she muttered in the same flat tone. "Always check the temperature log for future time, no matter how stupid it sounds. Never skip it." I frowned. Future time? What the hell does that mean? Marge didn't explain. She just looked straight at me with those cloudy eyes, no emotion at all. Just follow the rules. They're the only thing keeping us alive in this place. Every line here was added for a reason, and none of the reasons are nice. Then she turned and walked away without another word. Her heavy footsteps faded into the cold until there was nothing but silence and the constant drone of the fans. I was alone now, the cold sinking deeper into my bones. The smell of raw meat and the metallic clangs mixed with this brand new list of rules, especially that last one that sounded more like a curse than an instruction. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature, something older, more primal. The job itself wasn't complicated. Mostly checking temperatures, scanning barcodes, and occasionally shifting smaller pallets. But everything had to be done in brutal cold, with numb hands and a mind that never fully relaxed. I got used to wearing the cold mask so I wouldn't inhale freezing vapor. Sometimes it stuck to my lips. There was an unwritten rule, never lick them. More than an hour passed as I familiarized myself with the layout, the narrow paths between the towering racks. The fans kept droning, but every now and then a hook would clang unexpectedly and make me jump. I kept imagining the hanging carcasses swaying in the dark, the steel hooks like bony fingers scraping against each other. I pulled out my phone. Time for Rule 14, Every 30 minutes, photograph your own boots. I grimaced. The rule was supposed to help spot unfamiliar footprints later, but what was so scary about strange prints? Still, I followed it. I peeled off one glove, the cold slamming into my skin instantly. I quickly snapped a photo of my frost-covered work boots on the concrete. The lens fogged a bit, but the image was clear enough to see the familiar tread pattern. I shoved the glove back on and rubbed my fingers, trying to bring some feeling back. Every 30 minutes, the same pointless but somehow ominous ritual. Around 3 a.m., I passed the temperature logger printer. It was an old industrial unit bolted to the wall, its metal casing rusted and covered in a thin layer of ice. Suddenly it whirred and spat out a long strip of paper. I tore it off and glanced at the readings. Then I froze. The time printed in bold black, 3:17. My digital wall clock clearly said 3:12. I rubbed my eyes. Still 3:12. The paper said 3:17. My head spun. A glitch? Or was Marge right about the future time? The urge to rip the paper up and pretend it never happened hit me hard. But Rule 21 flashed in my mind. Always check the temperature log for future time, no matter how stupid it sounds. I reached for my phone to photograph it as per another rule, my hands shaking from cold and adrenaline. That's when a figure stepped out from between the racks and walked quickly toward me. It was Nadia Petrova, the young IT technician who handled the plant's SCADA systems. She rarely worked nights, and definitely not this deep in the storage area. Her black hair was tied back messily, her face always tense. Her black nail polish was chipped, and she carried a UV flashlight for checking refrigerant leaks. "Evan, what are you doing back here?" she asked, sounding surprised. "Just checking the temp log," I stammered, holding out the strip. She stared at the paper. For a split second, something flickered in her eyes. Worry she tried to hide. "Oh, that's just a glitch," she said too casually. "The auto-logging sometimes gets the time wrong. Nothing to worry about." Her voice was too calm, fake calm. In that moment, I thought I saw her give a tiny, almost imperceptible nod before she turned to the printer and fiddled with a small USB drive. I only caught a glimpse. She seemed to be copying something quickly. "Fixed it," she said, turning back with forced calm. She didn't hand the strip back. Instead, she rolled it up and stuffed it into her jacket pocket. "I'll look at it properly in the office. You just keep working." Then she hurried off between the tall racks, leaving me alone with a storm of questions. She'd said it was nothing, but her eyes and the way she pocketed the original told a different story. Why copy it secretly and take the original if it was just a glitch? Marge had added Rule 21 on my very first night. Nadia showed up right when the future time log printed. Too perfect, too coordinated. A trap? The cold in the warehouse suddenly felt personal. I kept working, but my mind wouldn't let go of that temperature strip and Nadia's quick exit. The cold felt heavier now, like it was pressing down on my chest. Every clang of the meat hooks sounded sharper, like they were counting something down. I still had inventory to finish in aisle L7. It was one of the narrowest corridors, squeezed between towering stacks of frozen pork sides that rose so high the weak LED lights barely reached the top. The air here felt thicker, damper, with extra frost vapor rising from the older pallets mixed with the sharp sting of ammonia. The hanging carcasses swayed gently whenever the fans kicked on, their steel hooks clinking together in a way that set my teeth on edge. I moved fast, scanning pallets and trying to push thoughts of Nadia and that 3:17 log out of my head. I wanted to finish and get back to the more trafficked areas. As I turned to leave, a sudden deeper chill hit me. I stepped back and instinctively grabbed the heavy metal door frame to steady myself. In my hurry, or maybe because the thick gloves dulled my sense of touch, I pushed the inside latch once. Then, without thinking, my thumb slipped and I pushed it a second time. Click, click, two distinct sounds echoed in the frozen silence. My stomach dropped. Rule 1 flashed in my mind, clear as day on Marge's yellowed sheet. Never latch the inside lock more than once. Do it twice, and the handle will seize from the cold and snap off. I grabbed the handle and tried to turn it. Nothing. I twisted harder, then yanked with all my strength. There was a sharp crack, followed by a heavy clunk as a piece of metal hit the frost-covered floor. The handle had broken clean off. The door was now a solid slab of frozen steel, sealed tight. I'd locked myself inside the narrow aisle. Panic surged through me, cold as the air itself. I fumbled for the two-way radio on my belt, fingers numb and clumsy. "Caleb? Caleb, this is Evan. I'm trapped in aisle L7. The door is jammed." The handle snapped off. Static crackled. Wind noise and fan roar filled the speaker. I pressed the button harder. "Caleb, I'm stuck. L7. Door handle broke. I can't get out." After a long, terrifying pause, Caleb's tired voice came through, sounding far away. "Evan, say again? Wind's bad. L7. Handle snapped. I'm locked in." Caleb sighed heavily. "L7's the farthest aisle, man. Gonna take me 15 minutes to walk back there. Just stay calm. Probably the cold making the metal brittle. I'll bring the master key." 15 minutes. 15 minutes and minus 25 degrees Celsius. That could feel like a lifetime. His words didn't comfort me. I was completely alone. Just the endless drone of the fans and the occasional metallic clink of hooks. Then I heard it. Clink, clink, clink. Not random. Rhythmic. Coming from the opposite rack across the narrow aisle. It had a clear, deliberate beat, like something counting down. Rule 20 slammed into my brain. If you hear hooks clanging in a steady rhythm, kill the lights in that aisle immediately. Stay in the dark. It's your only chance. I didn't hesitate. My numb fingers scrambled along the wall until they found the light switch. Click. The entire aisle L7 plunged into total darkness. The cold instantly felt twice as sharp, cutting through every layer like it wanted to freeze my blood solid. Frost vapor thickened, swirling in the sudden black, turning the space into something alien. Gray shapes and faint greenish glows drifting through the mist like figures moving between the pallets. I told myself it was just hypothermia playing tricks or the afterimage of the LEDs. But the shapes looked too solid, too purposeful, sliding silently through the gaps. The rhythmic clinking stopped. Then a new sound started, soft scraping, like rough fabric dragging against metal. It came from the opposite rack. Something was moving, something that didn't like the light. My breathing came fast and shallow, each exhale freezing instantly into white clouds in front of my face. I backed against the wall, trying to make myself invisible, waiting for Caleb. Time stretched painfully. The scraping grew closer, then faded, then closer again. I didn't dare move. I barely breathed. Finally, a loud metallic bang echoed, something heavy hitting the floor. Bright white light cut through the mist as a powerful flashlight beam swept the aisle. Caleb had arrived. He was a big guy, his dark green protective jacket dusted with frost. In one hand, he held the master key ring. Without a word, he strode over, grabbed my arm, and pulled me up. His eyes flicked to my injured hand, the one I'd torn skin off trying to open the door earlier, and the strip of skin still frozen to the broken metal edge. "God damn it, Evan," he muttered, sounding more exhausted than concerned. "I told you not to double latch." He pulled out his own waterproof notebook, same brownish-red stains as Marge's, and a special pen that worked in freezing conditions. With gloved hands, he carefully picked up the broken handle piece, bagged it, and made notes like he was filing a routine report. Door handle snapped due to cold brittleness. Victim touched bare metal and lost skin layer. He read it aloud in a flat voice. No comfort, no questions. Just documentation. He'd clearly done this before. "You were late," I said, voice shaking. Caleb glanced at the wall clock, then his own watch. "Always half a beat, Evan. Always half a beat." Half a beat. The words chilled me deeper than the air. I looked back into the dark aisle where the shadowy figures had moved through the mist. The scraping had stopped, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Was any of it real? Or just the price of breaking Rule 1? Caleb bandaged my hand roughly in the security office using industrial first aid supplies. His face stayed blank the whole time. "Always half a beat," he repeated quietly, like it was some private joke between him and the warehouse. The cold store wasn't just a workplace anymore. It felt alive. A giant machine testing how long I could stay sane and alive. I went back to work, trying to ignore the throbbing pain in my hand. Every movement made it worse, but stopping wasn't an option. Then, from a distant aisle, I heard the heavy rumble of a forklift. A big, bearded guy lumbered out of the frost haze. It was Greg Voss, the forklift supervisor. He was built like a bear, always covered in grease and white frost powder, nails permanently black with grime. His forklift had a faded demon skull sticker on the front that he sometimes whispered to when the brakes squealed. "Evan," he growled, voice rough. "Got a pallet that needs moving ASAP in aisle K9. No label on it, light as hell. I gotta run. Emergency at loading dock." He didn't wait for an answer. Just turned and disappeared toward his machine. A pallet with no label. Light. Unusual. Rule 5 hit me immediately. Never open or process an unlabeled pallet, especially if it feels unusually light. Treat it as suspect cargo. Greg had never been careless with problem loads before. Why the rush this time? Why leave it for me? Unease crawled up my spine as I headed toward aisle K9, deeper into the warehouse where fewer people went. The pallet sat alone, wrapped in pale blue shrink wrap. No markings at all. Even from a distance, it looked lighter than the heavy meat pallets around it. Maybe 20 kilos less, just like Greg said. I shouldn't have done it. But curiosity and suspicion got the better of me. I pulled out my utility knife and carefully cut the shrink wrap. The cold air inside rushed out, sharper than the rest of the store. When the last layer peeled away, my stomach turned. Instead of frozen meat blocks or cartons, there were dozens of medium vacuum-sealed bags piled haphazardly. Each one held something dark and lumpy, and every bag had strands of dark hair stuck to the plastic, thick clumps of human-looking hair pressed against the inside. The smell that hit me was wrong. Not normal frozen meat. It was the sour, sweet rot of decay that the cold couldn't fully kill, mixed with ammonia. In the center was one larger bag, bloated and pulsing slowly. Thump, thump like a weak heartbeat trying to keep going. I froze in horror. Rule 12. If you see an abnormally swollen vacuum bag, puncture it immediately and leave the aisle. Survival instinct took over. I raised the knife and stabbed the bloated bag in a spot with less hair. A loud pop echoed. Foul gas exploded out. Ammonia mixed with putrid decay, strong enough to shake my mask. Thick brownish-red sludge sprayed everywhere. A bit hit my mask. Then something small and white rolled out of the tear and landed on the frost-covered floor with a tiny clink. A human incisor tooth. Clean white, but with a trace of pink frozen fat still clinging to it. Definitely not animal. My heart hammered. This wasn't spoiled meat. This was something far worse. "Clean up!" I shouted into the radio, voice cracking. Ava Locke, the industrial sanitation lead, arrived first. Short, stocky, mid-40s, always carrying a floor scraper and pushing a cart full of cleaning foam. She looked pissed at the sudden mess. "Jesus, Evan, another unlabeled pallet?" She spotted the tooth, and her face tightened. "You opened it?" Before she could say more, a cold voice cut in from behind. Victor Ames, the risk manager from head office. Victor was tall and thin, always immaculate, gloves spotless. He never crossed the yellow safety line painted on the floor, like it was some invisible barrier between his clean world and our filthy one. "What happened here?" he asked flatly. I tried to explain, but he cut me off. "Enough. Just clean the area, no questions. Ava, make sure every trace is gone." He pulled out a small evidence bag, carefully picked up the tooth with tweezers, and sealed it without any reaction, like this was routine. Ava quietly scraped a bit of the sludge and hair into her own small container while Victor's back was turned. A tiny act of defiance. Victor wanted it buried, whatever this was. Human remains processed into meat pallets. He was covering it up. And the worst part? When I later checked the photo I'd taken of my boots per Rule 14, there it was. A second set of prints running parallel to mine, about a meter away. Same direction. stopping right at the unlabeled pallet. The tread was different, dusted with extra frost powder. Someone, or something, had been standing right beside me the whole time I opened that bag. I wasn't alone in the warehouse, and whatever left those prints had watched me break the rule. The second set of footprints in the photo haunted me more than anything else. They weren't my imagination, they were real, running right alongside mine, stopping exactly where I'd opened that nightmare pallet. Whatever made them had been there with me, watching, waiting. I forced myself to keep working, pushing pallets back into place, even though my injured hand throbbed with every movement. The warehouse felt like it had eyes now. Hundreds of invisible ones. I was moving an empty cart through a narrow lane between tall racks when a strange smell hit me. Sweet at first, like burnt sugar syrup, but underneath it carried a metallic tang and something rotten. It didn't belong in the cold store at all. I stopped and breathed it in without thinking. Big mistake. Rule 6. If you smell anything sweet, do not inhale deeply. Ammonia leaks can mask themselves that way. Dizziness slammed into me instantly. My head swam like I'd been drugged. My legs turned to rubber. The air suddenly felt thick, heavy, pressing down on my lungs like an invisible hand, trying to squeeze the life out of me. I dropped to my knees, vision blurring. I tried to grab a nearby pallet for support but missed. The world tilted. Then the alarm screamed. A piercing, stuttering horn blasted through the warehouse. Huu, H-U-U-U-U-U-U. Short, urgent bursts. The CO2 leak alarm. Rule 15 kicked in through the fog in my brain. When the CO2 alarm sounds in short bursts, do not run. Drop low and crawl. Running puts you in the heaviest gas at head height. I fought the urge to bolt and forced myself face down onto the concrete. The air near the floor was still brutally cold and thin, but not as deadly as the layer above. I crawled forward on my elbows, each breath a desperate struggle. Frost powder stuck to my jacket like tiny needles. The sweet smell lingered but grew weaker the lower I stayed. The alarm kept wailing. Through the thick mist, I saw a figure emerge. Rafael Suarez, the refrigeration engineer. Skinny, hunched, his jacket stained with salt and ammonia residue. He looked annoyed, not surprised. Without even glancing at me crawling on the floor, he walked straight to a large copper pipe running along the rack and started hammering it with a rubber mallet. Thud, thud, thud. Rule 11. Never hammer pipes. It can trigger emergency defrost cycles and spray ice shrapnel like razors. He kept pounding, muttering to himself, completely ignoring the screaming alarm and me on the ground. Each hit sent vibrations through the floor. A few minutes later, the alarm finally wound down. The choking feeling eased. I managed to stand on shaky legs. Tessa Blom, the EHS safety officer, came hurrying in next. Young, blonde, sharp-eyed, always carrying a handheld CO2 monitor that was already beeping wildly. "Evan, you okay?" she asked, real concern in her voice. Unlike the others, my monitor's going crazy. "Red zone." She crouched, scanning the area. Her eyes locked on the fine white frost powder trails on the floor, the same kind I'd seen in my boot photos. "That's crystallized CO2 residue," she said. "Leaking from somewhere. The heaviest concentration stays up high. That's why you crawl. Running would have killed you." The powder trail led straight to the heavy metal door at the end of the aisle, door L3, the one Noah Barnes, one of the truck drivers, always warned people to stay away from. He called it bad hour territory and kept crosses and charms in his cab. Raphael appeared again, looking even more irritated. He glared at Tessa's beeping monitor. "Just another auto defrost glitch," he grumbled. "System's fine, stop making drama." Tessa's face flushed with anger. "This isn't normal, Raphael. The levels here could kill someone standing upright. You hammering those pipes probably made it worse." He shrugged and walked off toward the control panel, still muttering. Tessa turned to me, voice low and urgent. "Evan, be careful. This place has dangers worse than the cold. And some of the people here, they don't want you knowing the truth." She pointed at the frost powder trail again. It ended right at L3's door. Whatever was behind that door wasn't just frost and ammonia. My injured hand burned as a reminder of every rule I'd already broken. The tooth in the unlabeled pallet, the second set of footprints, the sweet gas that almost knocked me out. Everything seemed connected to L3. I headed toward the internal security station to check the infrared camera feeds. The monitors showed ghostly green and red thermal images of the vast warehouse. I zoomed in on one of the quietest, mistiest aisles, aisle H9. A blurry human-shaped heat signature appeared on the screen, standing where no one should be. It raised a hand and touched the camera lens. Rule 9. Never clean frost off the cameras. Your hand will appear on the monitor before you even reach it. Without thinking, I raised my left hand and touched the exact spot on the screen where the figure had touched the camera. Instant burning pain. My skin stuck to the freezing monitor glass like superglue. I yanked back hard. A wet ripping sound filled the air as a thin layer of skin tore off and stayed frozen to the screen. Blood welled up, freezing into red crystals almost immediately. Right where the shadow had touched, there was already an older, darker frozen blood smear. Then the aisle lights above me flickered 3 times. Rule 7. If the lights flash 3 times, do not look up. Falling ice blades come down like knives. Too late. I glanced up. A sheet of razor-sharp ice broke loose from the ceiling and sliced down. I twisted away, but not fast enough. It slashed across my left forearm, leaving a deep, freezing cut. Blood froze on contact. Above me, the ceiling was now covered in long, dagger-like icicles hanging like teeth ready to drop. The rhythmic clinking of hooks started again from aisle H9. Slow, deliberate, counting down. Then Nadia Petrova appeared out of the mist, moving fast. Her face was serious, eyes wide with worry. "Evan, are you hurt?" I saw the camera in H9 glitch. What happened? I told her everything. The shadow on the monitor, touching the screen, the lights flashing, the ice blade. She examined the cut on my arm, then pulled out her laptop and plugged in a small USB drive. "The cameras aren't faulty," she said quietly. "Someone's tampering with the firmware. They're editing frames to create predictive images, stuff that shows what's about to happen before it does." She showed me the temperature log from earlier, the 317 printout. I kept a copy. I've been tracking the incidents. The CO2 bursts, the unlabeled pallets, even the lights flashing. They all follow a programmed schedule. Someone's changing defrost timers, pressure settings, even making metal more brittle on purpose. It's like a domino chain. Your actions trigger the next trap. "Who would do that?" I asked, dread building. Nadia's eyes were grave. "I don't know for sure, but it's deliberate. They're creating a script, and they know exactly what you'll do next. No ghosts. No monsters. Just human evil. Someone turning the entire cold store into a death machine." The clinking from H9 continued, closer now. Nadia handed me the USB. "Keep this safe, it has everything. I'll try to get more proof from the control room." She disappeared back into the mist. I stood there in the freezing dark, wounded, terrified, but finally understanding. Victor Ames wasn't just covering up accidents, he was orchestrating them. The realization hit harder than the cold. Victor Ames was behind it. Not ghosts, not the warehouse itself. Just a calculating man turning this frozen hell into a killing floor for profit and cover-ups. Every rule, every accident, was part of his script. My hand and arm burned with every heartbeat, the frozen blood crystals cracking as I moved. I needed to keep going, but the feeling of being watched never left. The hooks in the distance kept clinking in that slow, deliberate rhythm again. I headed deeper, trying to finish my rounds near aisle K12. The forklift roar suddenly exploded from somewhere behind me. Greg Voss again. His machine sounded wrong, strained and angry, like he was pushing it too hard. Rule 8. Always let the forklift warm up for a full 10 minutes before moving it. Otherwise, the tires freeze solid and it slides like it's on ice. Greg never waited. He was always chasing numbers. A high-pitched screech of locked brakes tore through the air, followed by the sickening grind of metal skidding on concrete. Then a deafening crash. The whole rack shook. Steel beams groaned. Hundreds of meat hooks tore free and rained down like deadly hail, slamming into the floor with chaotic clangs. Frozen sides of pork split open on impact, spraying black, rotten fat and blood across the frost. The stench of decay exploded everywhere. I ran toward the noise and found Greg's forklift crumpled against a twisted section of rack. He was slumped over the wheel, blood trickling from his temple and freezing instantly into a dark smear. He groaned weakly, trapped in the seat. Ava Locke showed up moments later with her cleaning cart, looking tired rather than shocked. We started clearing the biggest pieces together: twisted metal, shattered pallets, torn meat. Under a pile of fallen hooks and rotting pork, I spotted something pale: an empty sleeve from a protective jacket, still attached to a thick work glove. Ava helped me pull it free. Inside the glove were fingers, actual human fingers, skin purple from frost, nails still attached, frozen solid to the lining. Rule 16. Never pick up a dropped glove. A glove on the floor means there's still a hand inside it. Ava's face went pale, but she stayed professional. She used her floor scraper to carefully pry the frozen hand free from the sleeve. A small piece of bone and a few strands of dark hair came out with it, stuck in the congealed fat. This wasn't an accident. Someone had been crushed here before and swept up like spoiled product. Liam Park, one of the young temp packers, walked by right then. When he saw the glove and the exposed bone and hair, his face drained of color. He stumbled back, eyes wide with raw terror, one hand clutching the old beanie he always wore despite the rules. He looked like he recognized it. Or worse, like he was terrified it could have been his. Before anyone could say anything, Victor Ames and Marge Kane appeared like vultures. Victor's voice was ice cold. "Seal this area now. Greg, you're signing the incident report. Operator error. Failure to warm up the forklift. Rule 8 violation." He bagged the bone and hair without flinching, then took the sleeve from Ava. Marge pulled out her stained notebook and red pen, forcing Greg to sign while he was still bleeding. Tessa Blom pushed her way in, CO2 monitor beeping angrily. "This needs to be locked down properly. We have a serious incident and possible gas leak." Victor blocked her physically. "This is internal. Stay out." Nadia was visible in the distance, phone up like she was recording. Victor spotted her immediately. "Petrova! Delete every copy of those future time logs. Now." "That's just system noise." Nadia's voice carried clear and defiant. "I'm not deleting anything. Those logs prove the incidents are scheduled. Someone's manipulating the defrost system on purpose." Victor's eyes narrowed dangerously. "If you keep pushing, you'll end up as another unlabeled pallet." The threat hung in the freezing air. I slipped away while they argued, my mind racing. Victor wasn't just covering accidents, he was manufacturing them. And anyone who got too close became the next incident. The CO2 alarm suddenly screamed again. Short, urgent bursts. The sweet metallic smell flooded the aisle stronger than before. My head spun instantly. I dropped low and crawled, following the same desperate pattern as last time. The monitor I'd grabbed from Tessa's earlier fall started beeping rapidly in my pocket. Through the thickening mist, I saw Raphael again, hammering pipes frantically inside the defrost chamber, trying to fix whatever Victor had sabotaged. He looked panicked now, not annoyed. My radio crackled. Nadia's voice, urgent and low. "Evan, can you hear me? It's Nadia. I'm in the main control room. Someone, Victor, has been altering the defrost firmware. He's creating dangerous pressure spikes and gas pockets right before the safety audit. He wants clean paperwork, even if it kills people. He told me to delete the future time logs or I'd become spoiled cargo." Her voice cracked with anger. "I planted a backdoor. When the clock hits the exact future time on that 317 log, the entire defrost system will shut down completely. No wind, no falling ice, hooks go quiet. That's your window to get out the main door. Use it. Don't trust anyone else." The beeping on the CO2 monitor grew frantic. The frost powder footprints were everywhere now, circling me, leading toward Raphael's chamber. I crawled faster, lungs burning. I had to survive until 317. That was my only way out. I crawled out of the worst of the CO2 pocket on shaking limbs, the monitor finally slowing its frantic beeps. The sweet metallic smell faded, but the frost powder footprints were still there. Sometimes behind me, sometimes just ahead, like they were guiding me deeper into the trap. I couldn't trust anyone except Nadia now. I had to follow the rules, but use them smartly, the way she'd suggested. Turn the warehouse's own mechanics against itself. The clock on the wall read 3:15, only 2 minutes until 3:17. I moved toward the main exit door, every step careful. First, I found the main breaker box for the aisle lights and yanked the fuse for the overhead LEDs. The lights died with a loud pop, plunging the area into near-total darkness. The cold felt even sharper, but at least no more ice blades would rain down if the lights flashed. Next was door L3, that sucking mouth of negative pressure. It was still cracked open, pulling frost vapor inside like a beast breathing in. I dragged 3 heavy plastic pallets over and stacked them against the gap, wedging them tight with my boot. The suction fought back, but it weakened. The horrible wet breathing sound from inside the chamber dropped to a faint hiss. I pulled out my red spray paint. Instead of just marking pallets, I sprayed a bright red line on the floor every few steps, a trail of blood-red streaks that wouldn't move when I turned my back. Rule 19 said don't go back to a marked pallet or it'll be in a different spot. I was using it in reverse, marking my escape route so I'd never have to look back. I kept moving toward the loading area and the main exit, red lines trailing behind me like a vein of blood on the frost. Halfway there, I heard low voices behind a stack of beef pallets near the office corridor. I ducked low and listened. Victor Ames and Marge Kane were talking on an open channel, thinking they were alone. "We need to make sure all the spoiled loads are processed completely," Victor said, voice cold as the air. "Especially the unlabeled ones. No one can know." "I understand," Marge replied flatly. "But we can't keep burning through workers like this. Liam Park is already skin and bones from pulling double shifts. The recent incidents are drawing too much attention. Tessa Blom is digging deeper." Victor didn't sound concerned. "Just make sure the workers' comp paperwork is signed. Everything here is operator error. We've got insurance for that. The audit's coming. Clean records are all that matter. As for those future time logs, Nadia Petrova still has copies. I already warned her. If she doesn't delete them, she becomes another unlabeled pallet." A chill colder than -25°C ran down my spine. They weren't just covering accidents. They were feeding people into the machine on purpose. Exhausted temps, rule breakers, anyone who asked too many questions, then processing the remains as spoiled product. The rules weren't protection. They were a script for how to break us. My radio crackled softly. Nadia's voice, barely a whisper. "Evan, I heard them too. Victor's coming for me. But I'm not deleting anything. The back door is set. When the clock hits exactly 3:17, the whole defrost system shuts down. No wind, no ice, hooks go quiet. That's your only safe window to open the main door. Don't use the preheat cycle. Victor rigged the pressure differential to slam it and crush whatever's in the way. Just wait for the exact moment." The wall clock ticked to 3 hours, 16 minutes, and 50 seconds. I reached the main exit door. It was a massive insulated slab, handle frozen solid. I couldn't risk the preheat. Instead, I climbed onto Greg's abandoned forklift, started it with numb fingers, and wedged the machine diagonally across the approach lane like a steel barricade. It wouldn't stop someone forever, but it would slow them down. 3 hours, 16 minutes, and 55 seconds. I pulled out the crumpled temperature strip with 317 printed on it. Using my lighter, I carefully warmed the frozen door handle just enough to loosen the ice without triggering anything. The metal softened under the tiny flame. The entire warehouse suddenly went quiet. The fans died. The constant wind stopped. The hooks stopped their deadly rhythm and went still with a final, almost relieved clatter. 3:17 exactly. I grabbed the handle and yanked. It turned. The heavy door groaned open on frozen hinges, revealing the warm yellow light of the outer corridor. Fresh, damp, slightly dusty air rushed in. No ammonia, no rot, no death. I stepped through, lungs burning with relief. The door swung shut behind me with a heavy, final thud. My legs nearly gave out. I'd made it. Then I looked down. Blood from my torn hand, my slashed arm, and the cuts on my face had started thawing in the warmer air. Bright red droplets ran down my jacket, dripping onto the concrete in a thin pink trail that stretched back toward the cold store door like a signature. I turned around. Marge Kane was already standing there, right in front of the closed door. Same blank, frozen face. She held her stained notebook and red pen like always. Without a word, without any change in expression, she pulled out a fresh staple and added one more line to the yellowed rule sheet taped on the door. I watched her write it, slow and deliberate, like a ritual she'd performed too many times. Rule 22. Do not bypass the preheat cycle on the main exit door during night shift. Consequence: crushed wrist or worse. She stapled it in, gave me one flat look, then turned and walked away. I stood there bleeding, shaking, staring at the new rule. I'd survived the night, but the warehouse wasn't done with me. And it sure as hell wasn't done with the next poor bastard who walked through those doors thinking it was just another night shift. The cold still clung to my bones. The metallic taste of fear still coated my tongue. Somewhere behind that steel door, the hooks were already starting their slow clink again. Victor, Marge, and the machine they'd built were still in there, waiting for the next Evan Hart. And the next line on the rule sheet: